All right, traders, welcome to today's recap. This is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and it is Monday, June 10th. We did have some advances in the overall averages today. I thought today was a little bit of a difficult trading day if you wanted to do a bunch of things intraday. I'm really feeling that we're getting a lot of the moves right now, and this is not anything new. This has basically been the trend for a long, long time, is that the majority of moves happen overnight. So a little bit tougher to kind of position during the days. During the day, sometimes what I will kind of look to do is to scale in throughout the day, and then really look at a name at the end of the day and say, okay, this is a name that it's showing some strength throughout the day. It closes on the ties, and therefore I want to add a swing trade to it. I really didn't see that many opportunities today to do that. I think obviously we've had a really nice run over the last week. So let's go through the S&P technicals, and that'll kind of lead us to our next analysis, and I'll go through some of those intraday moves that happen in the sectors and in some of the individual names. But this is kind of I would say mission accomplished, right? We've gone all the way through the June value area, right? So we started below the month. This is called the 80% rule if you're not familiar with it, meaning that if you start the month below value, or any value area, so it could be the year, could be the 1 hour, and looking at that for the week, which we saw a lot of those last week. But we started the month below value. We've made it all the way through value now. So 28.95, that's the level that we've been talking about since we got firmly into value last week, and very quickly we've made it all the way through value. So at this point, very easy, I think. Sorry, I'm just reading a headline. It says Trump says China's Xi will show up at the G20 summit. I think that's all. I don't think that headline is a surprise. I guess it's whether or not they're actually going to speak. So I think just going forward, what's the next setup that we have here in the S&P, and if we switch over to the 1 hour chart, you'll kind of see what I mean. But first of all, we need to close above 28.95 and change here. So maybe call it 28.96 in S&P futures. Now, what could possibly happen the next couple days this week? We could see a little bit of chop. We could kind of hang around below value, or if the market really has power, we're going to break through. But I think, if you want to look for confirmation, it would be 20, which I always err on the side of 28.96. But after a pretty decent move, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if we consolidated here a little bit. And I think overall may lead to some more trading opportunities if we kind of chill out a little bit in the short term. We're not majorly, we kind of burned off some overbought levels today. I'll show you what the next level is. That would be 29.42. That's about a almost 1.5%. It's about 1.45% higher. So if we manage to kind of hang in here, and we'll see, tomorrow's value area will appear, and I'll show you that tomorrow on the 5 minute. Actually, we might have that already, but yeah. So it looks like I would basically call it the top of value from today. If we manage to hold this 28.82, then I think it's in the cards to go higher. Now, if you don't want to get really crazy with what to do on a day-to-day basis, basically monitor the low of the day, and as long as we don't break that, then you can kind of continue to position to the long side as long as we don't break any support. So that's a really good level to watch, and showing how today kind of went where we just basically chopped around for a bit. I think waiting for that next leg, in the coming days is probably the right thing in the cards for me to do. Let's go over to the Qs. Really talk that one to death a bit. Let's go over to the Qs. The Qs did not finish on the highs of the day, so I think 186.31 is in the cards for the Qs. We did manage to kind of cut that difference in half from what we talked about in the member weekend video. So 186.40, and again, we don't have to get there in a straight line, but we've got the whole rest of the month. So it could be, we're at what, Monday, June 10th. So, we've got a bit to try to get through the value area for the month. IWM was showing some relative outperformance early on. Where did IWM finish? But I think it gave a lot of that back. Small caps are just really having a tough time holding early strength, right? So we are in value. That's good for the month of June. But let's see what we do. Maybe we come back and retest that bottom of value 150.61, but we've got a pretty decent size value area for the month of June. So that's it for the indices. Just to kind of further just talk about what I was mentioning before, you'll notice that I've got two columns here, right? And I'll just kind of highlight this column N. So, of course, end of day performance is most important, right? Percentage change for the day. But I like to see what we're doing on a intraday basis, right? Basically from where we open, because that basically tells me how do I want to be trading the day? Do I want to just be hands off for the day, or because if we're basically just opening on the highs and giving back gains, then I want to trade less, obviously, than trading more. If we manage to trend the whole day, right, then it's a pretty good day trading day, and depending on if it's in a straight line and so forth, a lot of different situations there, but really kind of tells me where the opportunities are. And one of the things that I come back to is this tweet that I saw by Steve Burns this weekend. Alpha comes from taking overnight risk in trends. Again, so if you're scalping, if you're an expert scalper, more power to you. You can kind of manage in these situations. But if you're more of a trend trader, if you're more of a swing trader, it becomes pretty particular. And that's why I mentioned in the beginning of the video where you want to be actually adding your positions. I know that's very counterintuitive for some. Back when I was trading institutionally, we used to call the first hour amateur hour, right? Because everybody jumps in the beginning of the first hour, and then we usually kind of pull back a little bit. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing right now, more or less, is the fact that again, the overnight moves are really where the alpha is captured, and during the day it's a little bit different. Now, of course, that could change, but it just seems like that's the kind of moves that we're getting right now. And if you go back to this spreadsheet, you can see I've got this sorted by column N, which is percentage change from open. And you can see the Qs were the only one. Small caps, I guess, finished up a little bit from the open, but again, gave back a lot of those intraday gains. But, NASDAQ was the only one that kind of stayed above the open. S&P actually finished lower than the open. Same thing with Dow. TLT, which I have in here too, finished down almost 1% for the day, and you can see that right for the day. Only, again, you could see more areas in the market, more sectors actually sold off from the open versus actually gained. Your semis were your best performing group. That was pretty solid all day long. Finished up 2.5% for the day. The gold miners came back a little bit from the open, but again, really, why I'm emphasizing this is because there just wasn't that. It was kind of difficult. If you caught, let's say, Amazon on the open, you had a really nice move in Amazon, up 2% from the open. But Apple just up 40 basis points. So, we can just look at how this panned out for the day, and we'll start with IWM. So, this could really kind of make or break your day, which again is why I'm emphasizing this. If you're chasing on these first couple bars, and if you're not getting out, this is a really tight scalp. I think even from here to here, to say that, if you're buying, let's say, next week's options, maybe that's a 10%, that's a 10-cent change. If you're buying something, let's say, I'm just making these numbers up, but let's say you bought right around at the money calls for not this week, but next week for, let's say, $1.25, maybe they went up to $1.35 if you kind of waited for that first bar to close, right? So that's difficult. And I think that's how most of today's names went. Again, Amazon acted differently, and we'll bring up the Amazon chart here as soon as Thinkorswim wants to go ahead and bring it up. There it goes. So yeah, I mean this did very well. This gave back a little bit of the gains at the end of the day, but I think all in all, this is not a bad chart, and starting to kind of form possibly a cup handle and move. I think it's got to get through top of value, which is 1916. So you can play for that. By the way, 1915, you can kind of play for that throughout the month to see if we can actually get through all the way through the value area. So I think that's an interesting chart to look at. We had a couple things going on right with deals, right? The Salesforce and I was going to say Workday, Salesforce and Tableau software. A lot of names they gapped up and then they just cooled off. So again, just to mention one more time, but something like this, right, that went up all the way to 106 but actually finished I think lower than the open, you kind of had to be involved in these names into today, because if you just didn't time, if you didn't get into it right on the opening bar, or if you didn't buy any pre-market, very difficult, right? I mean, the high of the day was inside of 10 o'clock, was at 9:40. And this is just one name, but it kind of looked like the pattern just repeated with a lot of these names. Now, these names have been on a nice run. Thursday, Friday, we talked about Twilio in the weekend member note. This kind of hung around for a little bit on the open, went a little bit higher, and then but gave it all back. So what does this tell me with this group and some of the other groups is that they're maybe a little bit tired right now. So my thought is to kind of let these names consolidate a little bit, and then we'll kind of go from there. But we can go across some other names too that I was looking at. McDonald's. I think McDonald's. I talked about this one in the weekend newsletter as well. I actually added a little bit into the weakness today. I also wanted, so this one came right into support. So again, a little bit, if you're looking for a little bit of confirmation, maybe look for an inside day after today. But I think people were worried about Chick-fil-A, I guess is the story. The other story of the day that got little attention was China was up big last night. We could look at some China charts just to see how they closed. I think Alibaba really interesting. I know that's been a name that just washed a lot of people out with this big move down. So it is starting to come to life a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised if this bounced further. Remember, we've got this G20 meeting. I think, and I added a couple names, in some China names. Again, I was looking for something a little bit different. I didn't want to chase software today after, a 3 or 4 day move. But I think Alibaba looks interesting. The only thing I'm worried about this name is they're still talking about a Hong Kong listing for the week. Right, I'm on the weekly bar, so 158.21 would be the level to watch to see if we can stay above that level. But if we look at the whole ETF, which is the KWeb ETF, again, something that I don't think is overplayed. It's probably under owned right now. I think everybody really scared about China names and so forth. But if you're looking for maybe just a couple week trade into that G20 meeting, if the rhetoric happens to increase, like positive rhetoric, then you could possibly see a little bit further of a bounce. And you could see how this looks on the daily chart too. It did hold support here. This is the whole KWeb Internet ETF. And again, I think playing the internet in this space, you're going to get plenty of bang for your buck if you don't want to pick single names, which I don't blame anyone for doing. And then possibly look for a move all the way through value, which is 46. So I think that is one of the best risk to reward setups, provided again that you use that support that I highlighted both in BABA, JD, and BZUN, which I also throw into the mix. Again, they didn't finish on the highs of the day, but most names did not, right? So for the day, so that's something I'll be watching. Just also some of the pot stocks. Kron finished very well. I think even though we saw call buying and the two other ones, ACB and CGC, sometimes the names that don't see the option activity actually perform the best. I'm a true believer in that. I think a lot of the names that we saw, if you go through people's feeds today and they're talking about call buying and the software names that, was in the beginning of the day, and most of those names closed lower. I think that's not great option activity, or that's not, I don't want to say not great option activity, but it's just not something that I want to follow, right? So I think if you use your own judgment in there, you'll come away with, rather than just blindly following some of the trades that are on the tape, I think you'll end up doing a little bit better. Personally, I didn't want to follow anything in option activity, the momentum stuff. I just didn't know if we were going to basically, close on the highs, which certainly we did not today. What else? A couple other groups to highlight. There was some names that finished really well. This OLED had a real strong day. Maybe this one revisits 52-week highs. It's got to get through 175.15, so I know you do have resistance right in front of it, but it's a couple names to watch. So a little bit of a smaller watch list for today, because I am, anticipating maybe a little bit of chop for the next couple days, and then overall, I think this market looks great. We did highlight where I think where traders can hedge. And keep in mind, of course, the video is for information purposes only. I'm not giving out any recommendation or advice. But we did kind of put together a checklist of things that you can watch. If things do start to deteriorate after a nice run, we've got our checklist in place. So I'm not going to show that there. You have to be a member of Tribeca Trade Group. But again, it's always in trading. It's important to be prepared and looking forward and looking to that next step, so that you can both capitalize on opportunities, and also see the next area where you might get hit a little bit, or might give back some of your profits that you've made over the last couple days. All right, so that's it. Thanks for watching today's video. Have a great night. See you tomorrow.